You're listening to WCOM LP 103.5 FM Carborough and Chapel Hill. It's a Tuesday, it's 5 o'clock, and that only means one thing. It's time for another round of Snarky Faith with your host, Stuart Deloney. This is a space where we irreverently wrestle through life, culture, and spirituality, all with our heads in the clouds, our tongues in our cheeks, our hearts in our sleeves, and our feet on the ground. At Snarky Faith, the questions or even the answers are never the point. It's all about the conversation. So here's your host, Stuart Deloney.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to another round of Snarky Faith Radio. I'm your host, Stuart Deloney. And guess what I've got for you guys this week? Actually, it's a little bit of a change of pace. Yes, we have interviews on here. Yes, we bring on interesting people. And my guest today is interesting and has a story to tell. But I don't want to spoil it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into this conversation about conversations. I think you're going to enjoy it. All right, well, I'm sitting here with Josh Naaman. Josh is the brainchild behind the Belief Books podcast, videos and book series. Josh is also, as I found out, you'll have to tell us more about this, Josh. You're a designer, a drummer, and an educator. Is all that correct? Yes. I'm not smearing your good name right now.
No, that's all correct.
That's all correct. All right. Well, welcome. Love to have you on. Love having you on the show, Josh.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Hey, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I can't complain. I finished my master's yesterday.
Awesome.
No, the day before.
Applause for that. That's a big deal. I remember like turning in that last paper and just being like,
yeah. I threw my hands up in victory.
Yeah, that's super cool. Well, what I wanted to do is I want to center around talking a little about the Belief Books podcast. And before we even get to that, what I want to talk a little about your journey of like belief and in terms of like your vocation and your passions and all that stuff. So give us like Josh in a large nutshell.
Okay, cool. I'm glad you gave me a large nutshell.
Oh yeah, it's a very big nut.
Not a pistachio, although I love pistachios. To start early, I grew up in a Catholic family. I lived with my grandparents until 7th grade or so with my mom. I went to a Catholic school until 8th grade. So church 4 times a week, and so I was pretty well ingrained in it. That was pretty much my world. That family lives and breathes Catholicism, their faith, and attributing everything to God. And I was in it. I was an altar boy. So I helped out in the mass.
Did you survive being an altar boy?
I survived.
Okay. No horror
completely.
Stories.
No, because
okay,
I would have fought for myself. I don't know. The priest probably would have regretted picking on me if that were to have been the case. And I don't know what my trajectory would have been through that. And that's a terrible situation. One of the many complaints I have about the backwardness of what the rules of that faith do to priests, because there's psychological reasons for if you can't get married and do the natural thing that our bodies are literally programmed, if you will, to do. There's suppressing that, I think, comes out in those kind of forms. So that makes sense. But aside from that, I noticed early on that something didn't click, but I was always trying to study the Bible. I was always trying. And I believed that I believed, and I did believe, I would imagine, when I was younger. But as I got into college, to high school, I stopped attending church regularly. And then when I got to college, I took astronomy and really started to dig into like science and how things work, and just slowly became more fascinated with what's going on. And other things from my faith previously just didn't add up, and I could not cope with them. And then I started to watch people who were specifically talking about that, and I was just like, wow, their points are so valid. Like, I don't have an argument, and I'm this old, and I don't have an argument. And just that snowball kept going down the mountain. And you know, we can dive into specific topics of what I disagreed with, but that's kind of my faith journey. And now, now I sit, and you know, I would consider myself deeply connected to humanity, and I feel like the universe. And that's, you know, people ask like, are you spiritual still? And, you know, I think that word has a lot of baggage, but that's probably what I classify myself as, you know, our connection to other humans, humanism, and like just how precious this one life is. So, you know, I've had a nice journey. I'm still digging, hence the belief
Aren't we
books.
all? Or hopefully, aren't we all? I know we're not all digging, but yeah. Some people feel like they've already gotten to that place where they've arrived, they've figured it out, and it's all good, and no one needs to tell me anything otherwise. Those are the folks that always tend to make me nervous. Yeah. I mean, nervous in the fact of I never want to, like, be stuck at a dinner with them. that kind of nervous, being like, oh, how long is this going to be? Or how long is Thanksgiving dinner going to be this year? Those kind of conversations. So then, in the midst of that, so what led you to start your Belief Books project?
Absolutely, yeah. So early on in my undergraduate degree, I was really hyped up about animation. So that's what I was going to school for at Purdue in Indianapolis. And I was deep into animation and graphics, sucked into that world. But once I graduated, I started to get into more conversations about faith and why people believed what they believed. And I was passionate about it. I knew I was passionate about it. But I was doing graphics for startup companies, software companies, and helping people out with their websites. And professionally, I was sucked into a different realm. But over the years, I started to realize, based on all these other podcasts and people who had video series were talking and engaging with this stuff, and that helped me. I wanted to do the same, and I just never knew what to do. And then I decided to go back and get my master's. And when I made that decision, my entire goal, my main goal for my master's was to immediately start working on the production that would culminate all of my design, communication, editing, you name it, skills into one production series that satisfied my urge to try to spark social change through conversation, talking, being cordial, talking about the hard stuff that I just, in certain places, I just see that wasn't happening. And I wanted to be part of the wave that was exactly what you're doing. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? This wave of, let's get this stuff on the table.
Yeah.
And so through the 2.5 years of working on my master's, I used every excuse for every project that I could work on for my master's, sometimes entire classes, formulating that idea. It was originally going to be a mini documentary series.
Really?
And yeah, so I was going to do different topics. So the first topic would have been climate change denial, and that would have been the first episode of the series. The second topic would be something about faith or hell or heaven and conspiracy theories and whatnot. But I kept researching, and this was the beauty of my master's experience, was that I was able to give myself the time to dive deeper into thinking about what this final product was. And I discovered podcasting. Well, I'd known about podcasting, but I discovered that, oh, wow, why wouldn't I do this? And then mix video. And then I've always wanted to design a book and publish books. So I said, I could just repurpose the content, or take the content straight up from the transcriptions of my interviews, publish them in a book, and release that at the end of each year. And so that's kind of what it formulated, from a mini documentary series to a debate series, actually. It's going to be debate series for a while, video debate series. And then podcasting just culminated everything.
No, this is awesome. I find this whole project very intriguing. And it seems to be, from the ones I've listened to, is that you believe in the power of conversation.
Yeah.
In many ways. And so talk more about that. Like, I've noticed that. I've noticed like how you converse, how you interview people, just kind of the rhythm, what you do this. How do you think conversation can change us?
I think it's everything. I think that's where everything starts. It's what makes change. It's what generates change. It's what forms movements. But I think now more than ever, it's so nice because you can, for free, as you pay for the internet, but you connect to the internet, and then for free you can tune into Snarky Faith or the Belief Books and just dive into someone else's conversation for an entire hour and get into both of their brains without even knowing them. And who knows what could be said there. You could latch onto, wow, I really connect with that. And boom, something shifted in your mind. That's what happened to me. I watched, actually, one of the first series I ever watched was called The Atheism Tapes. It was just this one guy, and he just went and interviewed people with his camera. Super simple production, but the conversation was foundational to wow, people are just saying what they think, and they're analyzing this stuff, and whatever you're talking about, whether it be politics or religion or philosophy or math, the universe, space, I believe that the conversation is just where everything happens, and I think that's where change starts to happen. And it's just you could be driving, I could be working or running. I run and I put on podcasts all the time. And you can just take in this information while you're doing other things. And so it's the accessibility plus the importance of it all. Just I don't know exactly where I was going at the end, but but I believe that conversation really it's foundational to everything. I don't know where else you start.
Sure. No, I think you're right.
Problems out.
I think you're right. I mean, because especially a conversation is an inherently personal thing. Or it can be. It can be an inherently personal thing where in essence, conversation is two people like we are right now, virtually sitting right across the table from each other, having this conversation. And it is very personal, and it's different than debate. A conversation there's a certain openness. Like in many ways, I've over the years just begun to get really, I oftentimes don't see a huge point in debate, and many times because you have people that agree with person A, and they've come to listen to person A, and their minds aren't really changing, and then the tribe for person B comes there, and it just ends up looking like just two people screaming at brick walls and just trying to score points. And I know that historically, I think debates were a little bit different than they've kind of devolved to where they're at right now. Especially in terms of political debate. Those, through the last political cycle we saw for president, it was pointless. It was pointless to watch those, aside from people just watching to see who was going to screw up. It wasn't about substance. It was just all about zingers and who's going to screw up. And I was just like, what is this anymore? Or I've been invited to ones where you end up having it'll be someone that is an atheist versus someone that believes in creationism, and it's go, and they're just not. I'm you're not gonna convince anybody, and I don't know. It kind of seems pointless though. The one I found the most interesting, and I don't know if you're familiar with. He's a philosopher, Peter Rollins. He talks. He's Irish.
Yeah.
And not that defines who he is. He's an Irish author. And I had seen this, and they had this, I believe it was in Scotland. It was what was it called? It was something like a conference of dangerous thought. And Peter at his heart is a philosopher. And they had pitted him because he's written books in the Christian-esque vein. So they had a philosopher talking with a dogmatic atheist. And to watch a philosopher drive someone absolutely insane because he wasn't there to talk in the way that you'd think a pastor would. They were having conversations that were just absolutely frustrating because, when you try to nail a philosopher down, they just kind of come up with new questions or new ideas or new presuppositions about things. And it was enjoyable just to watch two people that were just not anywhere near the same universe and conversation. But you'd mentioned, especially in belief books, that you were concentrating on topics like climate change denial, faith, science, like activism, technology. Like, how did you nail down, like, these are kind of our focuses? Or
Yeah, I had to start somewhere. So, because I am open. I want to talk about drugs. I want to talk about cults, conspiracy theories. I want to talk about purpose and people's beliefs in themselves. So I chose that. I don't like the word belief, by the way, but I chose it because it's a nice catch-all.
Sure.
But I don't think really you choose to believe something. Beliefs are a thing, but you either accept something or you don't. But anyways, I don't want to pigeonhole myself in any topic, so that's why I kept it open to beliefs, and even that probably is more specific than I would have wanted. It's just also nice, the alliteration for belief books, BB. It's nice because I wanted to do a book series.
Yeah.
But I wanted to start with climate change denial because I believe that that's extremely important, and I also didn't want to come out of the gate only talking religion. I didn't want to come across as like all I'm doing is talking about religion, because there's a lot more facets to belief. So climate change is extremely important. It's very time pressing. We need to act on it now. So I wanted to get that information out there, and so I had to start somewhere.
No, that's awesome. I love it. This seems almost like an open source project that will just continue to just, morph and evolve. And
I'm actually really glad you said that, if you don't mind me interrupting, because further down the road, I want to create more of a model for other people who want to do something similar to be able to latch onto, to go, okay, I can adopt this model in order to talk about the things that I want to talk about, or to do something similar. So in maybe the next year or two, I want to create a training series and an online, repository of information for someone who's specifically looking to start up a podcast or a series to do something similar.
And the great thing too, when you start any kind of new project, the further you go into it, the more you learn. Yeah, well, how have I screwed up? I won't do that again. All of those things that you kind of learn the hard truths as you go through, and I think that it's a beautiful and gracious thing for you to be there to hopefully you kind of take the lumps of learning and then are able to package it and say, hey, I've learned from this. I've suffered from these mistakes, so you don't have to, type of a thing.
That's the best way to do anything, is to fail through other people, or just fail fast. But luckily, the way I learned it is through research online, which people had disseminated their experiences into a blog post or a video. So I'm just, in a way, giving back what other people gave to me, because I didn't pay for any of that information besides my internet connection. So it's just a beautiful thing.
No, it is. And so, and speaking like even more specifically in the realm of podcasts, because I know what you're kind of creating more of a multimedia experience, to where there's writing, there's video, there's podcasting, and books, that will be happening. In your mind, as you're beginning able to look out like over social media and podcasting, do you kind of feel like in a certain sense that podcasts are actually the new pulpits?
Yes.
Yeah. In culture?
Yep. No doubt. Look at Joe Rogan. Or someone like that. He started a podcast and had no idea the influence that millions of people watch each episode or listen to each episode. That's insane. And I mean, insert any popular podcast. That's crazy influence power. What's also crazy is there's an intimacy to you being right in someone's ears. It's just like how the TV changed that intimacy of someone's now like in your home with you and your family, talking to you and telling you to buy this Hoover vacuum. Oh, you should. And so, but now you have podcasts where there's no definition of what a podcast is. Aside from that, it's a audio on demand. You can do anything with the format. It can be 3 hours or 10 minutes, like your Snarky bites. And so you can go really deep, way deeper than any sermon that I ever heard at church was. A pulpit is. I've never thought about it that way, but it's absolutely I would totally agree with that.
And so for you personally, being in this and doing this and hoping to be able to open people's minds to new perspectives and ideas, and all of that, how does like the medium of podcasting feed you?
Yeah. Well, I love audio, so I'm a musician as well. And I realized, hey, I can write the music and record the music for it. I like conversations, so I feel comfortable editing those conversations. But I loved the dynamic of it, that there was no bounding box to what I could do. My next episode, I could write a story, and it could be kind of fictional, and I could have non-fictional threads through it that connect to an article that I'd read. I could do anything with it. I could have a debate one time. I could do it alone. I could do it with my friend or my wife or 3 people. So there's just this, I think it's a really new, still open, in an open medium that has so much potential. And it's nice because it's free to people and catching on. I'd say more people are growing fond of podcasting, but it's still, from what I'm seeing, is in its infancy as far as compared to what radio was or TV. It pretty much is radio, but I just love that it's so open that I can decide to do whatever I will with it, and try to connect with people in different ways. It's fun.
It is. It's tons of fun. And we'd mentioned earlier, like in the show, talking about just the power of conversations. In your perspective, and through the project you've been working on, how do you see that conversations can transform people?
How do I see that?
Yeah, or how have you experienced it, or how do you conceptualize it?
Yeah. Well, I think it comes down to that. I think that's the root of anybody discovering something. And I guess the conversation could be through someone writing. For instance, I'm a big fan of Carl Sagan, and I feel like at times, man, he was just talking right to me. And in a way, that was a conversation between him and a future reader, me. And I think the proof is in the pudding. I was transformed by conversation, and I've heard countless accounts that people are transformed through thinking harder, but based on a video they saw or a documentary they saw or a podcast they listened to. So I think the proof is just out there. The difficult thing is that we are in a culture, living in a society that is very, very quick. So attention spans, breaking through that noise is incredibly difficult. Getting someone to listen to my hour and a half long podcast, even when they're free, even when they know who I am, the family and friends I know haven't listened to it, it's difficult to break through that noise because they want to watch the new episode of Big Bang Theory, and they have, they want to go out for a walk and do whatever, the game, sports. Yeah. And those are wonderful distractions, but I think I think it would be healthy if people set aside at least like an hour to dive deep into something or meditate. But I think it's just difficult nowadays.
It is.
People are just in a rush through life.
We're pulled in so many different directions, whether it be technologically speaking or just, relationally with family, life, kids, job, work. We're just, we're spread very thin. But I will say, sometimes it's not the worst thing if family members don't listen to your radio show or podcast, because they're... Hypothetically speaking, sometimes they get really pissy at you for things that you hypothetically may say on the air or over the interwebs. But within this idea of conversation and transformation, from your perspective and from what you've learned from the projects that you've done, how do you, and this is something that always, it's a curiosity of mine, how do you talk to people who don't want to learn?
Yeah. Well, I'll preface this that I don't enjoy talking to people like that. I mean, it depends on where we are and what we're trying to get out of our interaction. But ultimately, if I can tell that you don't really want to engage in evaluation of what we're talking about, then I don't know why we're talking. You see some debates and a big question is, what would it take to change your mind? And someone says, well, nothing could. The conversation is over. What are we talking about? We can talk about like the weather and stuff, but wait, what was your original question?
No,
Got thinking about the weather.
I love it. No. I was asking about, how do you talk or have conversations with people that really don't want to learn, that don't want to change their perspectives, that want to just fire stuff at you? And I'm always curious about that topic, because I have like two default modes. I either get more and more sarcastic and snarky and just mess with people, just because if I'm stuck in a situation, I have to amuse myself instead of just it being inflicted with pain. And my other answer is I just mentally check out. And I know those aren't the right answers. I know those aren't the right. They're just coping mechanisms. They're coping mechanisms.
They are answers.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
But it's a difficult one because first off, because I don't like, I guess it's just that first off, I teach at the Art Institute, so most people who are in my classrooms are looking to learn. So some of the conversations that we have that are non-computer graphics related are nice. But I probably have a couple modes. One is I try really hard to dig down into like one particular thing. So I'm figuring out what are they focusing this conversation on, and I'm just going to try to keep on to that particular thing. So if they want to talk about heaven and that, like, what do you think about that I won't, meet my husband again? And so they're talking about the afterlife and heaven. I'm going to try to stay as specific to that particular thing until we can hash out that. Because there's no way that in any conversation you're going to dissect multiple strands in this huge web of something that makes up someone's beliefs. So let's just pull at one string or plant one seed potentially and talk about that very particular thing. The other is I just go to something that was radical for me, something that I cannot get over. Something like if we would be talking about a problem of evil or something like that, I would say, what about natural disasters? No people are involved in that. I don't know how I can get over the three tenets of a God. If a God is all powerful, made it happen, is all loving, and then knows what's going to happen from that, how could you explain natural disasters that kill innocent people? Does not compute. It's like a computer program. It's like, nope, does not compute. And I can't get past it. And I've never heard anybody be able to give me a good answer through that. I'm begging for it because that's a really interesting topic. And but I go for, I don't know if you call it going for the throat, but for me, that's my throat. Is like something like that is really, really difficult for me. I don't know how I could have a deep faith and can keep a belief based on certain things that are playing out in this world. So I'll try to focus, I guess. Or another way is, I guess, through a street epistemology type process is have them explain their reasons for why they believe what they believe. So keep digging to why do you believe that? And essentially only asking questions. So never coming on the, well, I think this. Yeah. Instead, just asking more questions so that at a certain point you can say, okay, so from what I understand, this is what you believe. And then they can say, yes, that's exactly what I believe. And then you can move forward. But if they have a disagreement, then trying to get to a point where you can articulate simply what they're trying to articulate to you. And so you can get an understanding, build a foundation at level 1, and then move up to level 2. And then use that same manner to get through that understanding. And then I think that can that leads to the productive questions because you can specify, okay, so this is probably where we disagree. Rather than assuming.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like that. I think that's good, and I think there's like a systematic way to handling. When you can systematize stuff on a certain level, it prevents you from handling on an emotional level completely. You're able to kind of take personalities out of the situation to begin to just really evaluate what's in front of you, what you're dealing with, what's behind the question, or what's the question type of a situation. No, that's good.
I look at it as like defense walls in sometimes ways because how far can we get without that emotion really coming into play? Because with talks with my family or mostly, I can see when I'm getting a little closer because the wall becomes a little more prevalent, and I can tell I'm at that a certain wall. Yeah.
Well, I want to ask you a question as an artist and a musician, and so this is from this author Matthew Fox. He had said this. He said, in the realm of what we're speaking about with belief, what churches need to do now is to renew self and society, is to take spirituality seriously. And this means taking art seriously. So the idea that through renewal of church and spirituality means that we take art seriously.
I like that. I think that's one valid thing or the way to go about it, because art's a way of expression. So letting people express themselves publicly or to whoever they're letting that art out to could be beneficial to the overall conversation, because art pieces essentially generate conversations. I have a piece of art that's hanging on my wall. I do urban abstract illustrations. I take photography all over, and then I come home and I manipulate that photography and I create an interesting piece that I like to look at. But that I hope in the future to have it hanging in people's places or whatever, to spark a conversation about that piece and then where that piece was originally from, and then sparking conversation about that location. And then it starts to not become about the art.
And when I like that, and one of the things, I mean, I've had plenty of shows about why Christian art generally sucks, and it makes people mad, but I don't care. But when it comes to things like specifically like art, what I love about it is that there's not an answer. There's not a distinctive, hardcore answer. And I think that when it comes to issues of belief and faith, I think that, especially when you talk about like the American Christian church, I mean, I think it's been the pursuit of certainty and, like right angles and, things that you can just, they're very concrete. And when you're talking about something that is inherently mysterious and inherently not completely concrete, I think art ends up being a better reflection of conversations like that in certain terms, because I think that that's one of the things that I've gotten tired with, especially within Christianity many times, is that there's, do you need an answer? I'll give you the 5 points of why this, like your answer, like why is there suffering in the world? Well, I'll tell you, here's my 5-point answer to completely sum up something that I don't know that there is. I mean, I have an answer, but I can't say it on the air, mainly just for FCC rules. But I mean, it's just that happens. Stuff happens. We don't always know the answer, and I think within spirituality, there's stuff that happens we don't know the answers for it. And I think that people that have richer faith experiences, and I know I'm being judgmental by saying this, are people that tend to embrace aspects of mystery, aspects of the unknown, aspects of that there is more to the journey ahead, that I can learn from others more than I can learn from all that I know where I am at right now on this little moment in history. I mean, I think that, like you'd mentioned, you wanting to start kind of an open source project. I mean, I think that faith, needs to be somewhat of an open source project, that there are things we know, there's things we don't know, and that there's experiences yet to be had. There's experiences and like epiphanies that we've yet to have, people we have yet to meet, conversations that have not been had, conversations that can enrich us. And so I think that in a certain sense, art can be seen in many ways like that there's interpretation
Totally. I love that.
Yeah, and I love looking at art. Like, I love when I am able to go to like galleries and stuff and look at art and talk to my wife about it. Because, her take on it will be completely different. She'll just be like, I don't really like this piece. I thought this was so beautiful, and this is what it said to me. Oh, now that you say it this way, I totally see what you're saying. These kind of conversations where our perspectives are limited. And,
sure.
And, yeah. I mean, art's a conversation in a certain way, too.
Yeah. I think it comes down to a lot of people like to be... It's in a way fears of the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
You had mentioned, I guess, being certain about something, like being uncertain, where not having the answer is okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like there's a lot of, from how I was raised, there always seemed to be an answer, even to questions where it's like, how could you come to that conclusion? But it was always so definitive. And so, yeah, the connection with art, that their art is, I mean, that's open, because it's pretty much subjective. It's objective too, but anything in a way can be art to a degree. And there's no necessary right or wrong. There's just taste, I suppose.
Yeah, you're right. It's taste. Like, I mean, when my kids were younger, I could look at something and be so incredibly proud. But if I go and show it to my neighbor and be like, "Isn't this amazing? This is wonderful. Look what he was doing here." Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Yeah, thank you for showing me this. Like when you look at other people's kids' stuff, it's like, it's garbage. I don't care, because there's no emotion attached to it. There's no relationship attached to it, and it's complicated. It's incredibly complicated. And even what you'd mentioned, like I feel like the easy answers are the cheap answers a lot of times, especially in the realm of faith and spirituality. Why does Aunt Judy have cancer? God's teaching her something. And as a kid, I was like, is God an ass? Like, why? Like, this is like, no. I don't think we need to completely, like, make these nice little thin lines. Like, this bad thing is happening because of this. Maybe it's because of pollution. Maybe it's because, of the fact that she was smoking 5 packs a day. Why?
Right.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, but it's complicated. And I've always been... Things like that have never been satisfying to me. Easy answers for hard questions, and they were just never satisfying, and they never. I think those are things oftentimes we tell people when we don't want to say, especially people that are in positions of being pastors, which I have been in the past. I think you want to go for the easy answer because you want to leave the situation. I'm going to be totally crass about it, but I think a lot of times, like, they don't know what to say. They want to sound like they know what they're saying, and they also want to exit the situation as quick as possible. Which
I have a story
run,
about that.
Yeah, which in the long run is not. It's not helpful to either party. And I sometimes I think the greatest answer is I don't know. But let's talk more.
Sure. Yeah. If I wish that was said more, because I mean that's where then you have room to explore. Mm-hmm. But I don't think people also like admitting that, hey, I was wrong about this, or I think I was wrong, or I changed my mind. It's like politics. I've been a Republican for 45 years. You're not going to change my mind now. It's like, what? Why? Why does it matter? You should wake up tomorrow, and if things don't align with your brain and you think a different way and you feel that that's valid, you can you can think something different in the next minute. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I was battling when I was watching videos and kind of stepping out of my box from my childhood. And then I read a book and I was like, whoa, I finished reading a paragraph and I was like, yep. And in those moments I knew, I don't believe this stuff anymore. And it took many years probably of slow, but then there were certain moments where it was like, this is, I agree with this. And it was okay. And what stunk is I knew that was going to be really, really difficult. I knew it was going to devastate my grandparents, which it did. Mm-hmm. And I think it led to certain fruitful conversations, in my opinion. And I'm happy that they knew me honestly, because I told my mom after I told her, because she just asked to my face, and I was like, okay, you asked, so I'm going to tell you what I believe or don't believe now. And I was like, but don't tell my grandparents. Don't tell. I called them Marmar and Pom Pom. And I said, don't tell Marmar and Pom Pom. And she did. And just changed the relationship because I was different in their eyes. Like, how could you not believe that? And so there was this staunchness of when all I did then was ask some questions to my grandfather. I was confused by how God could ask Abraham to kill his son. I was like, how could someone who is all loving do something like that? That was another does not compute kind of thing. And I just simply asked him about that. Like, are you comfortable with that story? Do you find anything wrong with it? Like I just explained, and it was anger showed, it got too intense to ever really talk about it. And I think that in itself is a tell. Like if I was playing poker, I'd be like, that guy is bluffing. Or, like something's up with that, because why would you feel that way if you had done, like if we're going to talk about, evolution or something like that, we can actually talk about it. I don't have to get like heated up and mad that you don't agree with it. Because ultimately, like, I know that if you keep learning about it, you're going to understand it too. And maybe I can give you another resource, and that's fine. I can keep talking to you about it, but, it's such an interesting realm when you get into that stuff. And that's just more fuel on why I started my series. I couldn't, once I started to get out, I also have been traveling the world quite a bit since college. And it's just like, man, there's a whole nother world out there. That is reality. And I just am fascinated that, I don't mean to be rude about this, but I think people can get stuck easily in the way of thinking, or for instance, a job that they don't like. You can get stuck. Because of maybe comfort or whatever it is. But so, I think what you're doing is just extremely important for this ongoing conversation. I think what podcasts are doing and some of these video series documentaries are shifting slowly, because maybe some people who are attending church right now go home and late at night, their parents go to bed and they start to watch these documentaries or listen to these podcasts in the background. And maybe over the years, like, because they're indulging in both conversations. I think that's so healthy. Just there's nothing healthier than to look at the other side of things, or to try to learn more. So it's I think that's good. I think you're right on about that. So I wanted to ask you a couple questions before we finish up here. Sure.
More or less rapid fiery, but not that rapid fiery type questions. So right now, when you look at the world overall, like what excites you the most?
Wow. I think that we're on the hockey stick curve of technology. I think there's unbelievable things coming. Think about when the internet really took off. Think about when just the short amount of time where no one had an iPhone or a smartphone. We're talking about space travel now, commercialized space travel, artificial intelligence. There's exciting stuff. I think there's also, because there's such big problems in the world, I think that leaves room for unbelievable collaboration that could change the world. I had an interview with someone, actually it's episode 6, my last episode that I published, with Nikki Rothwell up in Michigan. She's a horticulturalist, and it's a tough one. And she, we dug into far deeper than climate change, and we got into a lot more. I think there's just so much more to these issues than the issue itself. What she said to me was, nothing brings people together like a crisis. And you could think about war or natural disasters, but it's not necessarily a good thing that that's happening. But I think, for instance, a climate change thing or our differences in faith or politics, those, I think we all need to reevaluate how we look at that landscape as a positive thing, because there's room to try to figure each other out and collaborate and figure these problems out, because there are solutions. We just need to work together. I think there's a lot of distractions, so we gotta focus a little more. But I believe that there's this beauty in humanity. There's fun experiences to be had while collaborating and learning about other cultures. So there's a lot of exciting stuff. That's a massive question for the lightning round.
I know it is. This is like they're fat lightning bolts in this round. There's a little bit of space there. So what right now, what bothers you the most in the world today?
In the world?
Yeah. From your vantage point.
I think it would come down to that people are so stubborn to say that, to not explore another side. So, like, for instance, with the climate change thing, although that's getting really good, because I think as the facts come out, it's just obvious. But I think that's a massive problem that people aren't seeing that this how serious of an issue that is, because it's so deep into not just like the weather and people having to move away from the coasts or whatever. There's crazy effects that will happen. So that's a big one. But I think it comes down to people's beliefs. What's going on in our brains that for some reason encourages us to latch on to ideas and not want to disconnect from them. And I think that if we can disconnect more from our egos or our preconceived notions, and even sometimes our roots, and try to see from other perspectives, I think that is that in a way is the ultimate problem, one of the ultimate problems, because that so much stems from that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know. What do you think? What do you think is the biggest problem?
I mean, if you're going to it's kind of along the lines of what you're saying. I think that, well, more from American culture, I just think we've become more and more selfish, as humans. I mean, I think that a lot of these problems can just stem from, I want to get mine and I don't care about the consequences for anybody else. I mean, I think that you see that from issues of climate change because, for me to make changes, it's going to impact me in a way that makes me uncomfortable. And the last thing in the world I want to do is feel a little uncomfortable, but as the oceans are rising and everything else, I mean, I think that we're not willing to sacrifice little uncomfortabilities in the hopes of fixing big uncomfortabilities. Sometimes that makes me sad. And not so hopeful about humanity. I mean, I think that, not to get even too much into politics, even though we regularly do on this show. I mean, I think that, most of these issues, I mean, I think it's all stemmed from this kind of like narcissistic culture that we have. And now it's led us to being led from the Oval Office by the ultimate narcissist, and I think that, it's easy simply just to blame Trump, but I think Trump is a symptom of us.
Totally.
In so many ways. I mean, you don't get elected if you're not somehow part of the will of the people. And maybe we'll find out the Russians had more of a hand in this, but I'm still saying, I mean, I feel like that still lets us off the hook. It's an excuse a bit. I think that, our absolutely just our selfish nature is a problem. But what gives me hope is conversations like this and conversations that I begin to have with other people, that it's not all bad. I mean, it's easy to look at the bad because we get it fed in the news every day, because there's plenty of crap that is frightening, alarming, scary. For me as a father, being able to say, oh, yay, this is the world we're handing over to our kids. Good luck. Learn to swim. And I mean, but it's not even just here. I mean, I do a bunch of ESL teaching with children and adults in Beijing, well, all over China as well, but a lot of them are in Beijing. Cool. And just the nature of having well, I mean, when I talk to them, I have like the on the app on my phone, I have the weather for like a lot of the cities that I'll talk to people in, and there's almost every day just air warnings that the air is polluted, that certain people shouldn't be going outside. And so, I mean, we have problems here, they've got problems there, and that's sad as well too when you begin to look at it. But I think that when we go back to the climate, like we had talked a bunch about, all this is fixable. I mean, I know that we've done certain things, that there's certain red lines that we've crossed, but I think that there's so much that is within our capabilities right now to be able to fix, and and the one thing that's beautiful about the Earth is that the Earth is resilient. We're less resilient as humans.
Yep.
And the Earth will continue to be the Earth. It'll continue to go on and on and on, with or without us. And I think for us to be able to say, we want to be with it. Humanity wants to continue on. And even in the idea of space travel, I'm all up for that kind of stuff, but I don't want that to be, I don't want plan B. No. You know what I mean? Yeah. For us to be like, well, Mars, we can go and eat, Matt Damon's crap potatoes on Mars. That's the dream. That's living the dream. That's what we want to do. No. Fix the problem here, because the problem is within humanity is we'll just take our problems with us elsewhere and nothing gets fixed. But yeah.
If you think about the overall allocation of resources and time and prioritization of where we spend our time and our money and our resources, you could in a year shift focus. You give businesses tax incentives to try to figure out this solution, or transform your companies away from plastic, or this or that, or here's solar panels. I think more and more companies, I think this is where entrepreneurship and business are going to boom, is that entrepreneurs, there's going to be a new wave of entrepreneurs that are future thinkers, that are entrepreneurs that are looking to solve problems, but also see the opportunity of new energy. I can't believe that these energy companies are being resistant and not transforming our grids and their systems, because it's like Blockbuster and Netflix on a much more massive scale, but that's exactly what's going on. It's unbelievable. I encourage anybody, here's my plug.
Yeah.
Episode 3 of the Belief Books, I drove out to New York, and I met the founder and a member as well of an organization that supports a scientist who came up with a invention to suck carbon dioxide out of the air, and the stuff that's left is able to create nanofibers from that. So you can build your monitors, your phone stuff, your mice, pens, cars from the pollution. And it works, and it's a thing. And that's already invented. You have to do that, now he has to get big funding on scales to get it in the Sahara Desert and, get big ones going, or wherever it's going to be placed. But, that's one team.
Yeah.
And so there is hope, but I totally, there's other stuff where it's like, whoa, like my hope meter, like on a day-to-day basis, like
it is. And it feels like, I mean, just as much as our country is very polarized, politically and otherwise, but it feels like the hope, like there's this incredible hope, but at the same time, it's just like this back and forth with like pessimism, hope. I just wish, like, can we meet in the middle, people? Can we meet in the middle? It would probably mean I would drink less. So, but,
cheers to that.
Yeah. Well, Josh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being on the show. If people want to find you, if people want to find more about Belief Books, the podcast, if people want to stalk you on Twitter, Facebook, all that jazz, where do they go?
Sure. The number one spot is to go to thebeliefbooks.com. And you can listen to episodes there. You can access blog posts and some photos. You can comment on episodes. I'm also on Facebook. I have a page for the Belief Books, but I also have a group, which I'm more excited about for the Belief Books, which I call the Belief Forum. And that is a closed group in order to let people speak about whatever they want, so it doesn't show up on their wall or whatever. But that hopefully continue the conversations deeply from the episodes that I release. I'm on Twitter too at the Belief Books or at Josh Naaman. So if you decide to listen to the podcast, which I really hope you do, I'd love feedback in the form of an iTunes review or an email or a tweet. I'm all ears, or just enjoy the podcast. And thanks a lot, Stuart, for having me on. Big fan of what you're doing. And if there's any way that I can promote you more, I'd love to have you on the podcast as well.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. As long as I haven't already scared you off. So, yeah.
No way.
You've made it this far. Yeah, I'd absolutely love to do that. I look forward to it. I look forward to more conversation in the future, Josh. Thank you so much for your time.
Awesome. Me too. Thank you.
Well, that's all I've got this week. I'll be back again next week with more snark. And just a reminder, as we end this broadcast, you can always catch this episode and past on podcast at www.snarkyfaith.com. And as always, I send you out into this world with grace and peace and snark.
WCOM is listener-supported community radio, and Snarky Faith is only possible through our sponsors. Lumen, a spiritual community of seekers, sojourners, question askers, doubters, and skeptics, is a collective of fellow travelers that embrace the truth that all of life is sacred, hope is real, and tomorrow can be a better day than today. All are welcome. You can find more information at www.lumencommunities.com.